Okie dokie. Thank you for accommodating my time zone. I imagine
No, that's fine. No, it's still 9 o'clock here, so it's not a problem. I've got a
Oh,
cat.
that's great. Oh, good.
I now have a cat who wants to lie on my desk. I can never work. He's always on my laptop, so now I'm going to have to fight him as we're doing this, but that's fine. Cool.
Well, congratulations to you and your cat and Sonia. Is it Sonia? Who is your
Sonia?
To all of you for a wonderful festival.
No, thanks, Lloyd, and thanks for participating. And we just, I guess I'm just going to sort of do a little intro, and then we start chatting. Cool.
Perfect.
Right, we want to welcome the one and only, the legendary Uncle Lloyd Kaufman, the man behind Troma, the legendary Troma, the man and the legend. It's great to finally chat with you, and it's also quite a thrill for us to finally screen some Troma movies at our festival after 16 years. This is the first time we actually screened any Troma movies, and not just one, like a whole batch from Toxic Avenger to Shakespeare'sShitstorm. So we were very happy to incorporate you, and obviously we had to just give you and Troma a legend certificate as well, because you've been doing this for decades, and we love what you do, and everyone should love what you do. And if they don't know about you, hopefully they'll learn a bit more from this, and they should also go investigate and check out the hundreds of Troma movies that you've made. So,
Paul, you are a legend yourself, and Sonia is a more attractive legend.
I would hope so.
And your associate there with the furry associate is definitely
associate Ming the Merciless.
Oh my gosh! Wow, looks very dangerous.
No, he's a chill guy. He's a chill guy. He's 19. Well, he's 19, but he acts 2 years old. So.
No kidding! Wow, 19. Gee whiz.
He's a fit guy. But
my daughter Liz. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, no, I was going to say that. We just obviously we'll have to jump in and just find out who is Uncle Lloyd. How did you get into the movie business?
Well, one thing before
I was born, probably I think you've been doing this.
I'm sure that's true. I used to go out and date Buster Keaton. Come on, we met on Grindr. Question for you. Amazing how Grindr is known everywhere. I got a question. We have a streaming service.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we have any real distribution in your neck of the woods.
No.
So if we have about 1,000 movies on Troma Now, which is our streaming service, and the first month is free. Go to watch.troma.com, watch.troma.com, and all our classics and hundreds. Every month we put about a dozen exclusive new movies up, and documentaries, and my make your own damn movie lessons, and beautiful autographed pictures of Tromettes, should anyone want them, and wonderful music videos. It's a community too. People do meet people on Troma Now, and because Troma is a cult studio, so our movies are for people who love movies and want to have a little more substance to their art than the major studios give.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. A Troma movie, you can, besides if you see that intro, you're in for a great time, and it's just it's always entertaining. It's always, if it's sometimes the more over the top, the better, the way some of us like it. So I mean, that's just one of those things. You've created something that has become a staple for people who like odd movies, who like underground movies, who like strange, fun, crazy movies, and Troma just encapsulates all of that. But now, just tell us a little bit on how you got into making movies.
Well, I've written 7 books all about the making of cinema. One of them is a sort of a memoir, which James Gunn and I did. I went to Yale University, which is kind of a mediocre university. I was not a good student, and I happened to get put first year in a we call it freshman year in a room with a movie nut, and he ran the Yale Film Society, and I started drifting in to see movies. I really never thought about. I loved legitimate theater and Broadway musicals and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, I started drifting into the Yale University Film Society screenings and kept getting knocked out. I didn't realize I didn't even know Charlie Chaplin. I only knew him as a clown. I never knew him as a director and a writer and a musician and a genius. I didn't even know the concept director when I first met my roommate, Robert Edelstein. And we're still buddies. And he works for the New York Times. But the gang who ran the Film Society were auteur theorists. The auteur theory propounded by the French after the war to suggest that cinema should be a personal art and should be the control of under the control of the director, and should embody the director's mind and soul and heart, and that the directors like Chaplin and Buster Keaton and John Ford and Howard Hawks and Jean Renoir and Fritz Lang and Stan Brakhage, who I think is the greatest of all, at least in my lifetime. I just kept getting blown away by these great movies. And then one night at Yale, I happened to go to see Ernst Lubitsch's To Be or Not to Be, which is a wonderful mistaken identity kind of a movie. And I think Jack Benny, Carole Lombard, and Robert Stack were the stars. So and it was during that movie, there were about two other people in the, the Yale students were not too interested in the auteur theory. The Film Society would make its budget back by having a James Bond series of films at one point, and then they also ran some Russ Meyer movies, and they basically made their budget back with those movies. So the rest of the year, they would show these Samuel Fuller or Joseph H. Lewis, Roger Corman. That's the first time I saw his movies, and Corman proved that to me, at any rate, personally, that one could indeed make films on a modest budget with provocative scripts and good acting and good cinematography, and also turn a profit. So all that put together, when I was watching Ernst Lubitsch's To Be or Not to Be, it just clicked. I decided right then and there that I would give what I had to the people out there in the dark, and that I would make movies. Originally, I was going to be a social worker or a teacher and do something useful with my life, teach people to string beads on a string and paint happy faces on the beads, or teach people with hooks for hands how to finger paint or stuff like that. But after seeing all these great movies that the Film Society would show, I decided I didn't want to teach the people with hooks for hands. I wanted to film them, and made two feature-length movies whilst I was a student. And thanks to then I got I spent a year in Africa, in Chad, in the not, it's a different Africa than your Africa, but it was more like Africa in the movies, mud huts, and I was out in the bush with no electricity, no phones. 1965, that year, and you were probably not even thought about by your parents. So that shows you, Chad was quite an interesting experience, coming from New York City, block of cement. We're basically an island of cement, and here's Chad with all sorts of interesting insects and diseases and wonderful people. And, you know, it was like going to see John Ford's, what was the movie? Well, you know, John Huston's African Queen, although it was not quite as sophisticated as African Queen. So I got a lot out of that year. There were a lot of naked women running around. And also, you know, New York, you don't get to see backstage in Africa, at least in Chad. You know, everything was backstage because there was nothing, as I say, there were no conveniences. No, the only radio I had was a shortwave radio at night. I could get Radio Luxembourg, so I would get a little bit of news. The Beatles were becoming popular, stuff like that. And then the French, you know, basically I had French radio. So it was a great year and influenced my brain quite a bit. And I'm sure to some extent that's why I like to have naked people in the human body was very beautiful in Chad, men and women. And so it's a big part of our movies, of course.
Oh, and just how did things progress into you creating Troma, and how did Troma get created?
That's a great question, and I can ramble on about that for a long time. Again, I've written 7 books, and they all talk about filmmaking. And they're all pirated, so you can get them for free. Eventually, my final year at Yale, we call it the senior year. I had 2 job possibilities. One in California, which is, you know, an interesting, worse than, more dangerous than Chad could ever be. And I had one offer to be, you know, production assistant, clean toilets, whatever, and a big Hollywood movie with Barbara Streisand. And is she popular in your country?
I think they know who she is.
They know who she is, yeah. They knows who she is. Anyway, I had that possibility, and then I had the possibility of working for a crappy little company in New York called Canon. And thanks to our good friend LSD, I decided after a long 24-hour trip, as we called it in those days, acid trip, I decided to be an auteur filmmaker, like the French suggest, and stay in New York and have my way with the underground. And I took the job at Canon Films. And just at that time, they were working with John G. Avildsen, and he was. I was working there for quite a while before I met him, but eventually I met him, and he needed somebody on a set for a movie that eventually was called Joe, Joe, and Peter Boyle's first movie, Susan Sarandon, and I got to work with him. And I saw that he was really talented. The first time I got on the set, I saw the shot he was setting up, and it was, you know, this guy was no schlocko guy. So I worked hard and became friendly with him. I forced him to watch Battle of Love's Return, which was my first 16 millimeter color film, well, color and black and white. I had made 2 feature-length black and white movies at university, but poor John Avildsen, he had to sit through the Battle of Love's Return. Well, it's just Battle of Love's Return, starring Lynn Lowry, and I have the main part. Oliver Stone's first movie, and some Warhol people. But it's unwatchable. You can see it on Troma now, and I guess there's a certain the Troma people like it. The people who work for us, they rather like it. But they're all young and they all want to make movies, so they forgive it. But it's awful. But I did get into various. We sent Battle of Love Return to quite a number of theaters. It played in New York and got good reviews, and has sort of a boring Woody Allen feel to it rather than an entertaining Woody Allen feel. So the critics were very, very nice to it. And the Battle of Love's Return made Avildsen sit through it. Eventually, Joe, I don't know if you know the film, but it's a masterpiece, and it was made for about $100,000 US in 1970, I think it was. And Avildsen Avildsen turned what was supposed to be what you might call schlock, kind of a softcore, horrible script, and he hired Norman Wexler, with whom he had worked at an advertising agency. He hired Wexler to rewrite the script. And I remember Lawrence Tierney was signed to do the movie. But unfortunately, Lawrence Tierney had various problems, one of which was drinking. And he did something very, he actually created a pretty interesting Troma scene on the escalator of a department store in New York. I was assigned to help the costume woman. Was it? No, it was a guy. Who was? I don't remember. Anyway, I was assigned to sort of just be there to, I guess, while they were buying costumes for Mr. Tierney. And unfortunately, going up the escalator, I felt some kind of something on my pant leg just below the knee. And I looked down, and there was some yellow stream of liquid, which also was probably not good for the escalator. But at any rate, Tierney didn't get the job. He was that was enough for the bosses at Cannon. And Avildsen had always wanted Peter Boyle gave a great audition, and he did a. Are you familiar with Peter Boyle, by the way? Yeah, good. He's a good guy. Unfortunately, he died recently, but a wonderful guy. And we stayed in touch. Boyle at his audition did a wonderful improvisation. Today it would be considered, he'd probably get canceled for it. The hashtag Me Too people be all over, or the LBG, somebody would cancel. But Avildsen, it was good. It showed that Boyle, who was unknown, had the guts to be original and contribute. And Avildsen fell in love with him right from there. But the bosses didn't want. Oh, you want to say hello? We're talking to us. Here comes the film commissioner from the great state of. Don't be frightened, Paul. It's beautiful. Come a little more this way. You can. There you are. That's the new character from Troma, man. Yeah. Mask up.
Yeah, I'm all suited up to go for a ride.
He's going to go out and jog, and it's snowing here, Paul.
Oh yeah, that's the reverse. We've got hot summer coming in when you got the snow.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. This is the first snowfall today. But my wife, who you could see what a beautiful smile she has, she was the New York State Film Commissioner for 20 years, appointed by both Republicans and Democrat. And have a nice jog. Thank you. And she wrote we have a very generous incentive plan in New York where if you make a movie, you get a third of your money back in cash. It's slightly, there are other details, but it's very generous. It doesn't matter what kind of film you're making. Well, I think they don't give it for documentaries and they don't give it for porno, but everything else, you can have a student film and you can get the incentive. And it's, as I say, it's a third of your budget in cash. So she created that, and the city has New York State, which she was commissioner, appointed by Republican and Democratic governors, and the place is booming. I mean, there have been 10 new studios or 12 new studios built based on this incentive, and it's profitable for the state in terms of jobs and sales tax and all the other advantages it brings. And Troma never used it because of optics. And we had a perfect right to use it, but we didn't want to even give a hint of any conflict of interest. Yeah. But now that she's just retired with hashtag #Shakespeare'sShitstorm, our latest film, we will hopefully receive the incentive. We've applied for it and we've kept all the records, and we had a fancy big time accountant probably one of our largest budgetary items was this specialized accountant. So hopefully we'll get back a third of our investment. But at any rate, Avildsen saw the brilliance of Peter Boyle and Susan Sarandon and Norman Wexler writing Joe, and Joe got a nomination for Best Screenplay. The $100,000 movie made in New York, All Unknown People. Today, you would never have that. The Academy, the so-called Academy, I don't know why they call it an Academy, but the Oscars would never be, you'd never get a nomination for a $100,000 movie. It just, especially in New York and not in LA based and not with famous people.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, did you ever felt sort of lured towards California, Hollywood, or that direction?
Well, certainly we made 3 movies, all of which we made Sugar Cookies with Mary Woronov and Lynn Lowry, and again, Oliver Stone was one of, I think that was his first producing any job. And then we made a movie. Anyway, we made 3 movies and we got bamboozled on all of them. So we figured we better learn distribution. And Michael Hers and I became partners at that time. And because of distribution, we figured we better learn that because the 3 movies we made didn't make any money, and you can't keep making movies if your movies flop. And the problem was we either had crooked distributor or incompetent, or crooked and incompetent. So we figured we better learn distribution, which in those days, the 1970s, by the time we lost those 3 movies, not lost, but made 3 unsuccessful movies, then we figured all there was theatrical distribution. But we got lucky. We made a movie about the women's, well, the theme was women's liberation movement, which was trying to make it happen in the 70s, called Squeeze Play. It's about a women's softball team, a kind of a battle of the sexes. And it was a huge hit. It was raunchy comedy with a bit of political and social satire. And it came out before Porky's. Do you have Porky's? Do you know that film? Yeah.
I think which it was banned. I think it was banned. I think Porky's was banned for a few years, like we did with, especially in the 70s and 80s. It was just.
Oh yeah, our movies were banned.
But yeah, so yeah, we did get Porky's, and The Exorcist came a few years after that. Nothing almost hardly ever got released when it was released. The Film Publications Board first had to chop it well, and then so but luckily now we can get to see anything.
Yeah, our movies were banned everywhere. England especially had the Toxic Avenger, when it came out in the United Kingdom, it was about 40 minutes, I think, when it finally came out. But they called them nasties in those days. And but the United States had a worse situation because of the rating board would permit more violence and from the studios, from the monopoly, oligopoly, cartel, than they would with us. With us, if you had a lot of bullet hits, they'd cut the bullet hits out, but they would permit the bullet hits with Bruce Willis, Die Hard. Like Troma's War, one of our masterpieces, was totally destroyed by our rating board, which is private here. It's not government. But the problem is the double standard. They favor the established cartel movies, media conglomerate movies, but the independents, they are much harsher. So how could we compete? And unfortunately, most of the independent studios are all dead. Troma is really the last of the real independent movie studios. We're 47 years old. And there are none left with any longevity, unfortunately. Certainly in North America, we're the only one that has any kind of cachet or creativity or survival. They just can't survive with the kind of monopolistic. In other countries, like France and your country. The governments support local filmmakers. In the United States, the government does nothing for the local filmmakers, but it does lots for the media conglomerates, including getting rid of net neutrality on the internet now, which is basically, without net neutrality, I think the public and people like us, Paul, and you too, we will be hurt. The net neutrality is the free, open, boy, am I boring, the free, open, and diverse internet. It's the last democratic medium. Your festival, Paul, and Troma Entertainment, if we have something that's interesting, the public will flock to it. Because we're all on the same level with Walt Disney and Sony and Rupert Murdoch and all the big guys. But if they get rid of net neutrality, where we're no longer equal, they want to put in a superhighway for the rich people. So those of us who cannot afford to be on the superhighway will be screwed. Also, they are going to give the big studios the right to throttle competition and to slow it down and make it less attractive, and then also speed up their own movies. So probably in the future, the Amazons and Netflix and Disney Plus and Walt and HBO Plus, all those will have their own ISPs. They'll be great for the rich people, but we won't have enough money to get onto the superhighway, and also they'll be able to favor their own content and then throttle or slow down any kind of competitive stuff. So we're going to get fucked. But hopefully now with change in president here in the States, hopefully they won't get rid of net neutrality, but I'm not too optimistic.
Yeah,
anyway,
while the government does back movies here in South Africa, but it's also selectively. It's not like if you want to make a Troma type movie, it's not much chance that they will give you back. So,
is it a kind of is it a coterie? Is it sort of a coterie of the same people like in France who sort of determine what book is going to be the great book, and apparently
to an extent, yeah, but it's more a case of the subject matter. If it's a social political thing about South African issues, that's going to get the first go, as opposed to some mad crazy movie about a slasher or something. So,
Well, see, now New York State, thanks to my wife, Pat Sweeney Kaufman, you can make anything as long as it's not porn. So, Troma movie would get a student movie, $50,000 or $10,000, and it doesn't matter. It could be anything as long as it's a movie, and they'll give you and you do the proper accounting, of course. You'll get your benefit. And that's because my wife had the experience of working for and with Troma Entertainment. And when she became film commissioner, she understood the travails of independent filmmaking, so that she made sure that the law was, or the rule, or whatever it is called, I guess it's a law, that it covered all aspects of filmmaking except documentary and porno.
That's great. And but also another thing with South Africa, we're talking about net neutrality. They've also been trying to find all kinds of ways, especially the Film and Publications Board, to make money. They have to rate they were looking at trying to rate everything that gets released, even if it's a YouTube clip. They want everything to go through the Film and Publications Board, which is absolutely ludicrous. You need 1 million people daily going through everyone's little clips of their cats and see if it's offensive or not.
And of course, there's YouTube. We have a channel on YouTube that is free, and we had hundreds and hundreds of movies there to thank our fans. But then, after about 10 years, they kicked our channel off for community standards. And we didn't change the movies. They were the same movies. But our fans got really upset and flooded YouTube with objections, and YouTube reinstated the channel. But we would have lost 700,000 subscribers. Anyway, Michael Hers, my partner of almost 50 years, he migrated all the movies to Troma Now. So all the movies are on Troma Now. The first month is free, so you could watch everything for free. And the Troma YouTube channel has political statements and trailers and news items and short music videos and shorts that are not on Troma Now. It's more of a news thing now because YouTube was so nasty. And also, they used to pay us for content. In fact, if you want to see, I made a little documentary, Paul, called "Independent Artists versus Corrupt Media Cartel." It's on our YouTube channel, and it's also on Troma Now. But it shows how, 2 years before I made that little document, it's only about 10 minutes. If a movie of ours got 1 million views, on, we'd get $1,000, $1,000. And then 2 years later, we got more. That same movie got more than 1 million, much more. And we ended up with $1.08, $1.08. Wow. So they're screwing the people whose movies they're showing, at least the independents. And they also have a double standard that permits, you can see the nice people chopping heads off over in the Middle East. You can see CNN, cable news network, showing amputees and people getting blown up and all sorts of horror. But you cannot see Troma's War, apparently. Otherwise, and the standards keep changing. Like you say, you can't, it's mercurial. It's like a mercury. You can't pin it down. What are the standards? What was okay 10 years ago? What do we have to do? Go back and edit the Toxic Avenger again every year, and so it fits YouTube so-called community standards? No, fuck them. And so now we have Troma Now. There's about 1,000 different things there to see. Movies, shorts, documentaries, music videos, Tromette pictures, comic books. But if they get rid of net neutrality, I think I wouldn't be too optimistic about the survival of independent voices and the diversity that net neutrality brings. And unfortunately, the United States is kind of a leader in that area. So if they get rid of it here, I'm sure that the small number of companies in Europe that still exist together with their governments will probably get rid. And, the rest of the world, it's bootlegging. So there's no, at least for people like us, there is no chance. China makes a lot of noise about paying Disney and the big guys, but they don't pay us anything. Everything we've made is bootlegged in China, and we don't even get a 1 penny, 1 farthing. We get not even 1 franc from China. But the rich people who own the factories, the military generals who own the factories that produce the Blu-rays in China, or who own the streaming services over there, are using all our 50 years of movies and all our 50 years of what are called content, and we don't get 1 penny. I'm all for file sharing. I've written about it. I wrote a book called Sell Your Own Damn Movie, and it suggests that file sharing is a good thing. This was back when file sharing was considered a bad thing. If some teenager is living in his mother's basement and he wants to share a Terra Firma or Tromeo and Juliet or Return to Nuke High with his buddies, it's okay as long as they're not, as long as he, she, or as long as they are not making money off it, no problem. And if they are making money, we should get some of it. But China, the rest of, and most of the world, South America, it's all, if you're independent, you get bootlegged and you get nothing. Only if you're a major studio or you're a government-funded project, do you get anything.
A friend of
so
mine,
it's getting harder and harder to survive.
Yeah, a friend of mine lectured English in China, and he said just walking to stores there, and it's just anything and everything, and it's completely not legit releases. It's mad.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. Friends of mine are constantly bringing back movies. In fact, Poultrygeist, one of our best movies, Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead. It's anti-fast food, but it's funny as hell, and it's got some singing and dancing and chicken Native American dance zombies, Native American zombies. Anyway, it's hilarious, and it's a great film, and there's been Cinémathèque Française and all sorts of great institutions have played it.
I think I've
Not to mention,
got the Blu-ray on the shelf here somewhere. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, good. But the point is that movie, you know, it's a wonderful film, but it just got, you know, it's just hard to compete hard because the game is on the playing field is not. It's not this. It's that. It's like a greased up stripper's pole. Impossible to climb if you're making art. You don't know what the standards are because nobody writes. There's no definition, and unfortunately, the government and the local and various countries' governments are you know, they kind of control the production and the distribution. If you make a Canadian movie, Canada gives you a lot of money if you're a local filmmaker, and they require movie theaters to show the movies if it's made in Canada. If it's an American movie, you get no help whatsoever, of course. And we made a movie in Portugal called Mutant Blast. I don't know if you showed that.
Yeah, we screened it this year.
Oh, good. I hope it went well. But it's a very good movie, and the Portuguese government gave us more money, so we had a better budget. And then because it was Portuguese government production, they required their local. We had 15 theaters that played in a very, Portugal's a small country, and then 13 out of 15 were held over. The government requires theaters to play local productions. So Mutant Blast is in the Portuguese language, but it's Troma all the way. And Fernando Ale, the writer-director, worked on Return to Nuke High and Return to Nuke High. He came all the way over to the States to work on those movies, paid his airfare and slept on the floor like everybody. And he had made a movie that we distributed prior to that. So when he came to me with a script that was funny and full of action, and he took a few notes that I gave him, and he made a great movie. And thanks to the Portuguese government. The Portuguese government, even with the Troma name, they gave us quite a bit of money.
Oh. Yeah, we've known Fernando since his short film Papa Wrestling. We screened it at our.
Oh, great!
So
nice.
Then and then when I saw he actually directed, I contacted him and said, "No, we have to screen it." He said, "Definitely." So yeah, it was a great turn of events. We gave it the Gore Fest Award this year because of
terrific,
and the Back Effect Award as well. On top of
I think that Fernando will be up there with James Gunn and Eli Roth and Samuel L. Jackson and Trey Parker and Matt Stone and all the famous people that Troma has birthed over the years. I think he'll be another one.
I was going to.
And I'm producing.
I wanted to ask you about all the people that just like Roger Corman's Coppola and Scorsese. Everyone went from Roger Corman onto other things. Tell us a bit about the people who've been around Troma and what they went on to do.
Well, again, we're in New York, so it's a different talent base. There's lots of talented people here. And people like Marissa Tomei's first movie was The Toxic Avenger. Lynn Lowry, who's been in a lot of horror films, first film. Samuel L. Jackson. Michael Jai White is in the second Toxic Avenger.
How about the red pipe?
Yes. And Fergie, the musician, her first movie is, and also Paul Walker, the late Fast and Furious Paul Walker, was in Monster in the Closet with Fergie, first film. And we've created our own stars. The Toxic Avenger, we've never spent any money advertising. And Toxie is known probably better than any ingenue who broke into the movies in 1983, where the Paramount or Warner Brothers spent millions of dollars to promote them. Toxie's still pretty famous. And in fact, there's a remake going on at this very minute, directed by Macon Blair. They're in pre-production, but hopefully it'll go to be shot. They've got Peter Dinklage playing the Toxic Avenger, so it should be pretty interesting.
So it's not Troma. It's outside of Troma.
No, Legendary is the company. It's they make movies like Godzilla versus Kong and Pichiku, those little things that go around that. They're a big budget. They're doing a $1 billion remake of Toxic Avenger, and if it actually goes to production, and they seem to be moving there. COVID didn't help, but if it actually starts filming, we'll get some decent money, and I'll be able to make another movie.
Yeah. But I mean, it's no matter how much money you'll throw at this remake, I just don't know how you'll be able to replicate that classic. It's just from start to finish, original Toxic Avenger. Even the second one to me are equally fantastic. But
the best Toxic Avenger is Citizen Toxie, in my opinion. Citizen Toxie, which is the fourth one, but and it's terrific. It deals with abortion and all sorts of political issues in a very in-your-face way, like all our movies. Yeah. But it's funny as hell, and it's got I don't even want to spoil it, but Citizen Toxie, if you like the Toxic Avenger. But no, Macon Blair, who they picked to write and direct, if they let him direct, it's going to be great. His script for the Toxic Avenger reboot is better than the original one. And, with film history, you can see many remakes were better than the originals. A Star is Born by George Cukor, much better than the original. In fact, that was the third iteration of A Star is Born, the one with Judy Garland and James Mason. And Evil Dead 2, I don't think I'd be terribly wrong if I said it was better than Evil Dead Part 1. I don't know if everyone would agree with me, but I think most would say Evil Dead number 2 is the best of them, or certainly better than 1, and they both were brilliant. And of course, the war picture that was silent, and anyway, there's quite a number of just because you make a sequel and it's you don't go to movie jail for making a sequel that's better than the original. And I am quite confident that Macon Blair will do a great job. If you look at his work, he acted in and wrote The Green Room and Murder Party. You probably know these movies. And now he's written and directed only one movie, which is called I Don't Feel Safe in This World Anymore. It was on Netflix. I assume it's still on. Very original. It's not perfect, but he's going to do a great job. He loves Troma too. That's the thing. It's not just a paycheck for him. It's a big move up, and he knows Terra Firma and Tromeo and Juliet and Troma's War and Return to Nuke High and Return to Nuke High and even our more obscure movies and obviously Cannibal the Musical. He's a big fan of Trey Parker and Matt Stone. So he's on our wavelength, and he's going to make a great movie, I think. And he's willing to take notes from us, which is, pretty nice. The musical, Toxic Avenger musical, I don't know if is that come to South Africa.
I haven't seen that now.
If it does, watch it. Go see it. It's brilliant. And it's okay. You know, it played Broadway for a year, and played the West End in London. And it's funny as hell, and it's brilliant, and it's written by a Tony Award. You know, the Tony is like the Oscar for our legitimate theater. But David Bryan of Bon Jovi wrote the music, and Joe DiPietro. They're both Tony Award-winning creators. So the musical is wonderful, and I did give them notes, which they didn't use. They didn't use, but they did a great job. They took the Troma sense of humor and transported it into a mainstream format. And so when the movie was playing in New York, the audience would be kind of little old ladies who go to see matinees, and our own fans with the barbells in their noses and tattoos. So it was a really nice coming together of two constituencies. And the musical's hilarious. It's great. There is a streaming service, I think, called BroadwayVideo.com or BroadwayTheater.com or something. But the movie of the Broadway show was filmed very well done too, may I say. They filmed it in London, and they used 4 or 5 cameras, so you get the close-ups and you can understand every word, and it's terrific. So I can take no credit for that. Macon Blair is willing to take notes, and although I think the best is, I'm an auteurist, so I believe the director should be the dictator of their. I use the improper pronoun because we're not allowed to use personal pronouns anymore. You can't say his or her. You have to say their, which being 75 years old, I prefer to speak. I'd rather have good grammar.
Huh? Which brings us to Shakespeare's Shitstorm.
Yes, hashtag. You have to say the hashtag. It's very, very important, Paul.
Yeah. So hashtag Shakespeare's Shitstorm. I mean, your movies, there's always social commentary, always satirical, political angles that you put in there.
Well, Paul,
you obviously love Shakespeare as well. It's not like you're ripping Shakespeare because you want to rip something that's highbrow.
I do love Shakespeare very much.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I love Shakespeare, but right now I have to shake and pee. May I take a 30-second break?
Right.
Because I've just drunk this delicious Monster. I don't know if you have this. Do you have Monster drink?
We do.
Sorry. Can I take 30 seconds? I appreciate it.
I'll pause and we can carry on.
When you're 75, this will be one of the things that you notice. I'll be right back. Thanks for all the great questions. Back to Shakespeare's peeing. I mean, Shakespeare's hashtag Shakespeare's Shitstorm.
Yes. Tell us a bit, how did this come about? And,
well, Michael.
In doing so, can you also tell us just a bit how, in your mind, how a Troma movie gets put together? Because, I mean, obviously, all the basic components, they always work the same, whether it's a highbrow, arty film or a classic, crazy Troma film. You know, all the components are there, but how do you approach them?
Well, we don't take ourselves seriously, but we do take our movies very seriously. And I'm definitely a fan of Shakespeare. I'm not alone in that, I know. And The Tempest is my favorite Shakespearean play. I saw it when I was about 8 years old with my mother, which has made it all the more frightening at the time. And when we were doing Tromeo and Juliet, I thought maybe before I decided on Tromeo and Juliet, I thought about The Tempest, but that was 30 some odd years ago, about 30 years ago. So I figured I'll wait till I'm Prospero's age. Prospero, the protagonist of The Tempest, is old and has been banished and deals in magic. I'm old, and as my career has, I don't even want to use the word progressed, as my career has descended deeper and deeper into the reeds of the underground, I'm banished. And I don't make the kind of magic that Prospero makes, you know, abracadabra. But movies are magic, no matter what kind of movies you make. Caliban is a monster. I've dealt with monsters. I like love story. I mean, The Tempest is great, and it has some songs in it, the original Shakespeare's Tempest. So I wanted to wait till I was old, and then I could really feel what's in Prospero's soul and what he's going through. And so I decided to wait till I was older and make my favorite Shakespeare play into a Troma movie. Michael Hers and I, as I say, we make movies that I think will endure the time. They don't become obsolete. You know, a lot of the Hollywood stuff is baby food. A lot of the mainstream movies made by the governments with the local filmmakers, you know, are so safe that they, you know, those Sundance kind of movies, the Sundance Film Festival, most of those are baby food. They've got, you know, they're either overly politically correct or they have no real guts or soul to them and forgotten. And meanwhile, Class of Nuke High, Toxic Avenger, Tromeo and Juliet, Terra Firma, Troma's War. I mean, Terra Firma didn't break into profit until years later. And now it's one of our bigger selling movies, at least on Blu-ray. And on Troma now, Terra Firma is a huge success. So it takes time for the public to, you know, to discover our movies. It takes time because we don't have any advertising budgets for any. We've never had any advertising budgets. But one of the reasons Troma's cool is that the company owns all the negatives. We haven't given away the negatives, which is a big problem for independent filmmakers, because even Buster Keaton was ruined because he was making movies for MGM, who eventually brought him down. The suits killed him. Same with Preston Sturges, one of the greatest American directors we've ever had. And same thing, he was making movies first he was a writer, and crappy directors were ruining his scripts. And then he became a director, made 5 enormous hits in a row. And the bureaucrat, you know, the movie executives and the people in the suits who know nothing, suits and ties, they brought him down. And Preston Sturges's autobiography is called Between the Flops, and it's quite bitter. Same with Frank Capra. Same thing happened to him. He got accused of being pinko, being communist, and his career was sort of. You read his autobiography, and he's a very upbeat for most of it, and then toward the end he gets totally dark and bitter, and because it's you can't win. So at least I've had total freedom for 50 years. And that's why Michael Hers and I set up Troma, to make movies. We called them movies of the future. And indeed they were, because a Combat Shock. If you haven't seen that, we didn't direct it, but Buddy Giovinazzo, we financed it. It's terrific. It's the darkest movie about coming back from war. It was about a guy who comes back from Vietnam, but it's... it's the darkest movie ever. You can't imagine how, and it's scary and upsetting and brilliant, very serious, not like what I do. Also Death by Temptation, DEF by Temptation, all Black people. And we financed that years before movies by Black people became how do you say it, the flavor of the day. Death by Temptation. It was Samuel Jackson's first movie, and we were the only white people connected to it. And actually, you know, we bought a movie, a South African movie that was terrific. It's about vampires who only suck the blood of white people. You know, it's kind of a racial satire, dealing a little bit with apartheid. what the hell name was it? Was terrific. You know, we don't have the rights anymore, but it was great, and we didn't do well with it, but it's a masterpiece. What the heck's the name of it? And I just I'm having a sort of, but it's really good. I'm sure it was in a lot of festivals. Anyway, we wanted to create Troma so we could make our own damn movies without anybody telling us what to do, and we've succeeded. Except for the fact that our budgets are very low and we have to sleep on the floor, and people who work on Troma movies have to learn how to defecate in a paper bag and you know, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we've left a huge footprint on the cultural countryside. People who go to a Troma movie like Troma's War, they know they may love Terra Firma or Return to Nuke High, part of a 2-volume movie, but they know they'll never forget hashtag Shakespeare's Shitstorm. They'll go on a ride in the cinema that they've never been on. They'll have some genuine emotions, which is contrary to the mainstream movies for the most part, whose budgets are so large or whose content has been strained by the local governments to be to be the appropriate politically correct of their time. So they become timely and not timeless. Troma movies are timeless. And as the word of mouth gets around, and also all the bootlegging and piracy that gets around, our movies are pretty famous. It's quite remarkable. And as I say, the Toxic Avenger is, I'm sure, just as famous or more famous than any movie star that was around in 1983.
And just with the whole 2020 COVID disaster, it seems like quite an apt kind of narrative for a Troma movie, the whole situation. But I mean, how did it hamper things on your side, just personally, and sort of keeping the Troma ship afloat?
Yeah, it's a big issue. It's very hard because we get no help from anyone, and also we have 3 rules of production at Troma. The first is safety to humans, and we safety to humans, safety to people's property, and then in much smaller writing, make a good movie. And we have the art director make a really nice poster size propaganda. The 3 rules of production. Now we try to brainwash the young people who work for us, who haven't done it before. Most of them are this is their first movie they've worked on, so we want to be sure that nobody gets hurt, which is more than the mainstream movies can say. People have had their heads chopped off on the Twilight Zone and all that kind of stuff. Not Rod Serling, but the Spielberg Twilight Zone. And there are deaths constantly on mainstream movie sets for no reason. So we put posters up all over the place, on the craft service table, on the walls of the production office, everywhere we can, so it'll sink into people's brains to be safe. And so I wouldn't be shooting anything now until we have a vaccine or until it's 100% safe. I don't think I could possibly take the risk of exposing, maybe killing people. Who knows? So we're not. We have 3 movies that I'm producing, but luckily they finished principal photography, and one of them's British, one is in California, and one is has been shot in Las Vegas. So they're all editing now. But I don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm looking, if anybody has a really original script, can be any genre. I don't need anything about toxic waste. I can do that myself. Or mutations, I don't need that. So anything that's original, one of a kind, anything risky, that's what I'm interested in. I'd rather be the first to do a kind of a rom-com in a certain way than just do the same old crap that is being made today.
Yeah, the formulas are just, I guess guys who write screenplays, you know, when you buy these books on how to write things, it's just, you know, if they just force you into this formula, just shitting out the same thing over and over.
Yes.
Any point in
You're
that.
right. You're absolutely right, Paul. And unfortunately, the people who write most of these books haven't really made any movies, so it's bullshit. But I've made a lot of movies, and I got to make your own damn movie book, direct your own damn movie, produce your own damn movie, sell your own damn movie, et cetera, et cetera. And but I'm looking for my next script. I really don't know what I'm going to do next. So if anybody out in the Paul Bloom land has a really original script, any kind of a genre, and again, it doesn't have to be commercial, but it should be entertaining. Whatever, it should be entertaining. It can be dark or hilarious or political or sociological or whatever, but keep it entertaining and send it to Uncle Lloyd. And that could be.
When it comes to, you know, art and commerce, just how do you, on your side, still make movies fun and not let the business side of it sort of bog things down?
Well, we keep, you know, we've got a very loyal fan base, Paul, and I'd say there's about 1 million people every month who visit our various sites and my fan site and what have you. And I do keep them in mind when we're making a movie. You know, and our fans are quite strong and active, and they let you know it if they don't like something. So I do keep them in mind, but basically just want to do something I believe in. And the idea is I get into a certain theme. McDonald's moved in next door to the Troma building. We had a small building in Manhattan, and they moved in and they were bad neighbors. We had garbage all over the place, and we had rats the size of kangaroos in our basement. Well, not that big, but huge rats, the size of giant porcupines, or whatever. I don't know what your animals are there, but they were huge, and they would come over to our basement on the weekends to, I guess, relax. So we didn't like McDonald's, and I started learning about the evils of fast food, and I became very upset with it. And so we decided to make Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead. And out of that, also, I love Broadway musicals. And again, I'm older, so for me, it was the Rodgers and Hammerstein and Rodgers and Hart and the musicals of the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s more than of today. So Poultrygeist has got some singing and dancing in it, and it's quite it's an amazing film. It's funny as fuck, and it does have a musical. You know, a lot of people don't like musicals, including our fans. So you know, I still do what pleases me, but I do think heavily of our, I would say, 1 million fans who are, you know, who are dead set Troma fans. I hate to use the word dead. I'm sorry to use that word, but who love Troma. And actually, the secret to our company's survival has been the fact that our fans are in a position now to help us. Many of them are now my age and in positions of power, so they can indeed license our movies. Or there are still Toxic Avenger action figures. There's a whole new set that came out in the last few years. The Japanese put out these high-end Troma logo jackets that they're not like this Yale shirt. These things cost $300, $400 US. There's all sorts of licenses out there for merchandise that have come out of Troma movies. So we've got, and as I say, we've been smart enough to retain the rights to our own movies. Chaplin became very rich and powerful because he, even though he got kicked out of the United States, even though he was framed for pedophilia and all that kind of stuff, it was just basically people who hated him. It was, none of it was true. He was treated terribly by the American government. Eventually he left, of course. but he owned his negatives, so he died a very rich man. Meanwhile, poor Buster Keaton, equally as talented, maybe more so, his films were not owned by him, and he died a poor guy. You know, and again, that the so-called executives just tore him down, and he never had after the General, I don't think Buster Keaton ever had total control of his movies, whereas Chaplin had total control until his last one, Countess from Hong Kong, which stars Marlon Brando and Sophia Loren, which is kind of interesting. And it's a pretty interesting film. I thought it was pretty good. I haven't seen it in 50 years, but it did not do well, of course. But Chaplin was brilliant. He wrote his own music. He was a consummate filmmaker, and but also a great businessman and a great promoter. Buster Keaton was not. Like Picasso. Picasso was a great promoter, and whereas Van Gogh, even cutting his ear off didn't help matters with Van Gogh. He died penniless. They say he killed himself, and of course his paintings are now the most valuable paintings in history, I think.
You've been fighting for independent art for almost half a century, I would say, and people, you know, you have, when you say art, they expect it to be eyebrow stuff. You know, any creations, it's music, paintings, movies, art is art. And how do you is it just a case of people start realizing it themselves, that they can enjoy any art as art? Or do you think they need some education? You need to force them to watch a Troma movie?
I think the biggest problem is that the world of cinema and visual entertainment is in the hands of a small number of people. And we get, everything is strained through a small number, a cartel. Usually they want formulaic stuff, and it can be entertaining, like you can drink Prosecco or cheap champagne, it goes away and you had a nice time, and you've spent 2 hours or hour and a half of your life on something that's not going to be in your brain very long. But there is no way you can look at a great painting and not feel it intensely. In fact, Dario Argento made a wonderful movie called the Stendhal Syndrome, which the Stendhal Syndrome is an actual phenomenon that occurs when people are so moved by a piece of art, they collapse, they faint. And what the Stendhal Syndrome was all about. And Dario filmed it in the Uffizi Museum in Florence with real paintings and all that stuff. But that's what art is, something that is supposed to hit you emotionally. It's not something that should be strained. And, how many Batman movies are we going to get that all look the same? And like you say, a lot of those remakes and reimaginings and sequels, and they're not made from the heart, they're made from the pocketbook. Baby food is okay to live on. You can live on it and survive, but it's boring as hell. The Troma movies are like the jalapeno peppers of the cultural pizza, and a lot of people want to be provoked. A lot of people want to experience something that will hit them in the heart, or hit them in the soul, or maybe piss them off, make them disgusted. People want to have real emotion. Not everybody. Most people don't. Most people, are willing to live in the world of 1984, which we live in now, actually. In my country, you can say you have freedom of speech as long as you don't say anything. You get canceled. And that's the good thing. Our fans, I've been canceled a few times by third-rate bloggers who try to, they try to build themselves up by tearing down other people. The people who badmouth Troma haven't even seen our movies. They just have a conception of sex and violence, right? well, go back and the Cinémathèque Française has had at least 2 or 3 Troma tributes. British Film Institute, American Film Institute, Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, Shanghai Film Festival, even Egypt. I'm a dirty Jew. And I had a retrospective. Troma and I were invited to Egypt for a retrospective. So, you know, I think it's pretty difficult for these phony critics, and many of them are phonies. I think I know more about, and Michael Hers, my partner, know more about film history than most of the gatekeepers and heads of film festivals and who've never even made a movie. I don't know why certain people get picked for be heads of festivals. They're good at nothing other than excluding people and looking down their noses at people. That's why we set up the Troma Dance Film Festival, which is an all-free festival. Trey Parker and Matt Stone were obsessed with Sundance. And when Cannibal the Musical was completed, we all went out to Sundance. And Trey and Matt had actually submitted Cannibal the Musical to Sundance because we don't pay, we don't want to pay for movies to be judged by the film festivals. And then, you know, basically you're paying bureaucrats to fly to the Cannes Film Festival you know, while you're flying in the back of the plane, they're up front flying a tourist class and being snotty. So we don't like to pay for to enter film festivals. So, but the Sundance, Trey and Matt paid the submission fee, and they didn't even get a "fuck you" letter. They got nothing. So they said, "Well, look, we didn't get any. Nobody told us not to go to Sundance, so let's go." And they rented a room there. They rented a big room, and they showed Cannibal the Musical, and you know, for free. And Sundance bureaucrats went nuts. And the next year we brought Troma Dance, which is a free film festival. It's now going for 20 years. It's free. You don't have to pay to enter, and you have no VIP policy. So there's usually a closing party. And if you're a VIP, if you're famous, we welcome you, but we don't get you to don't let you in ahead of other people. So Troma Dance grew out of the fact that Sundance, we just were shocked. Trey and Matt too, they were shocked by how awful the Sundance organization was to genuinely independent filmmakers. We moved Troma Dance out of the Park City. We moved it away after 10 years. Troma Dance began to be accepted as a real festival. So now it takes place in Manhattan. We're not having it this year because we can't afford it. You know, there's no revenue. We don't charge anything. And B, we just didn't know how to do, you know, I just didn't want to have to set up I mean, imagine all the work you've done to set up your wonderful festival, and congratulations, because I can't imagine doing it virtually. I just wouldn't know where to begin.
It was a test, definitely a test, but it's something we had to do. Yeah, but I mean, you guys always you usually go to the Cannes Festival and go cause havoc. Did you miss not going to Cannes this year?
Well, Cannes has also developed into a elitist, snotty, fake festival. When I first went there in 1971, we didn't have enough money for a hotel. We had enough money to rent the theaters to show Sugar Cookies. That was the first year we went, or I went. And slept on the beach, no problem. We had the 35 millimeter film cans, and you know, they were in the theater, and we just slept on the beach and did a lot of promotion, you know, on the streets with leaflets and what have you. And everybody loved it, including the festival. Now it's become so corporate, and so if you sleep on the beach, they'll shoot you. So we probably will never go back. I made a short documentary called From Festival to Fascism, which kind of shows you what Troma went through the last time we went to Cannes. And police arresting us. And in fact, somebody was wearing a Troma T-shirt outside of the big theater at Cannes during the festival, and he had a ticket. He had a ticket to come see something. He was just walking around, and the cops told him, no Troma. No, he was wearing a T-shirt, Troma T-shirt. Nothing lewd or no nudity or anything awful on the T-shirt, just our logo. And they wouldn't let him walk around in that T-shirt. So clearly the festival has determined, like Sundance, they've determined they don't want independent films. They want to have independent films made by 20th Century Fox Searchlight or Sony Classics, or by various governments. You know, those are acceptable. The government, you know, it's a elitism. It's turned into an elitist festival, and they hate any kind of street theater or anybody who's really being festive. They hate that. So the Cannes Film Festival, I don't think we go back. It's not a festival. It's something else. It's more about perfume and more about what you are wearing. It's more about getting invited to a party. The people, 99% of the people who attend, they're more interested in going to a party than going to see a really great movie, which was not the case when I first started going. And it's only in the last few years that the festival has become nasty toward, you know, any kind of festivity. Unless it's a $500,000 party that's being put on by Harvey Weinstein or some of the other people that Cannes and Sundance worship. They love those kinds of people, right? And then it turns out those people are perverts. They're disgusting perverts. And my guess is that most of the, you know, the people who are trying to get rid of people like us, they are perverts for the most part. They're sick bastards. Anyway, you can see a documentary called From Festival to Fascism. Again, it's only about 10 or 15 minutes, but we have footage of showing you how the festival has policed out any kind of real energy for loving cinema, unless you're you know, I don't even know who's who these days. Oh yeah, they love the Nazi from Denmark. What's his name? Dogma guy. He's a great filmmaker. What the hell's his name? Von Trier's. Yeah, that's okay. You know, you can say Nazi things and then you get invited back. But he is a great filmmaker. I love his films, and he's you know, but you know, this is what Cannes is all about. Anyway, check out From Festival to Fascism on. You can see it on Troma now. It's free the first month. Well, if you could please share the Troma now and watch.troma.com, because you can subscribe anywhere in the world, and it's our main ability. We're paying all our staff, which is more than Disney and the conglomerates are doing. And we need Troma Now is really our main source of revenue at the current moment. So, and also it's great. It's got new movies every month, and it's terrific. You've got the visionary movies of the future there. You've got the James Gunns and Eli Roths and the Samuel Jacksons of the future on display, as well as all of our library of our own Troma movies, of which there are hundreds. So I hope your fans will go there and become members of Troma Now. And you may be able to meet somebody too who's a like-minded, true cinephile who loves cinema for cinema's sake, who doesn't love it just because they want to get Bruce Willis's autograph or whatever.
Definitely. Thanks, Lloyd. Thanks so much for what you've been doing all these years, and we're sure you will keep doing it for another 50 years, I'm sure. And just get better and better, and we'll support you and hope that you just keep doing what you're doing and don't change.
Well, thank you very, very much, Paul and Sonia. And what's the name of your feline friend there? What?
Ming the Merciless.
Oh, Ming the Merciless. Aha. Oh, good. I majored in Chinese studies at Yale. Ming Dynasty is a big deal. Terrific. Although I don't know Ming the Merciless, that's probably not politically correct. But the Ming Dynasty was pretty amazing. They lasted for 400 years and or more,
yeah.
Right?
No, for sure. But his Flash Gordon's nemesis being
yes, yeah, right. Right, you could probably not get away with that today, I imagine. No, you can't get away with anything today.
Well, just make Shakespeare's #Shakespeare'sShitstorm Part 2. Just do another. Well, the Merchant of Venice. What can you do with the Merchant of Venice? I mean,
the Merchant of Penis. Anyway, that's only a sample of what you're going to get on Troma Weekend, the wonderful, sophisticated humor. But thank you, Paul, and thank you for supporting independent cinema, not just Troma, but real, genuine independent cinema. And congratulations to you. And I hope maybe one of your fans has a script that is too dangerous for the cartel or for the governments. But Uncle Lloyd is not looking at the money. We're looking at let's make some art.
We might rustle something up as well. And
you never know. You never know. And thank you so much, and best wishes, and happy holidays.
Keep well.